When I was about 8 years old, I played on a hockey team with this kid named Chris Steele, who I was convinced hated me because he had really crazy looking eyes. And I didn't speak to him the whole season. We played hockey together. And towards the end, I met him at some skate park, and he said he'd like seen me skateboarding or whatever, and he was nervous to talk to me or whatever. And that's the first time I met Chris, who's the bass player from Alexisonfire. We played hockey together up until the time we were about 16, and he's like one of my oldest and closest friends. We grew up skateboarding together, you know, getting in trouble together, and been in every band together. We were in a band called Plan 9. We're in a terrible band called After the Hallowed Moment. I don't know if you know what that band name means. It doesn't even mean anything. And then we started this band when we were 17. And we recorded this in our friend's basement in Niagara Falls, Ontario, for $100. And we wrapped it in our drummer's math notes from high school at the time. And this is the vinyl version of that, which is hilarious because I don't even have a copy of the actual demo anymore. And like, yeah, this is a scan of like, you know, that would have been, it looks like our drummer's handwriting. And we numbered all of them. We probably sold about 300, and it's 10 years later. Now it's on wax. I'm talking about it in Germany. Life is very strange. This is the first thing that came out on vinyl for Black Lungs. Yeah, I printed 300 of these for a tour I did with City and Color. Black Lungs started out as this punk band, and everyone, I think, like some of the best punk bands, was way too sketchy to be in the band, and the band ended up dissolving, and like everybody quit and did all these other things. And I'd written all these songs, and I think I just got so sick of listening to them and playing them and not having anybody hear them except for, like, you know, the people that lived above me in the other apartment, you know. And so I tried to like deconstruct all the songs in some weird, like, in my head, like Billy Bragg kind of way, and just play them with a guitar. And that's kind of how this came together, you know. So there's almost like a country song on this, and then a cover by the Gun Club, who are one of my all-time favorite bands. And yeah, it's crazy to see this. I hand stamped these, and then yeah, this is 113 of 300. It's also my handwriting. So yeah, I think it came out of like necessity. I've never really been interested in doing something like having a solo project or anything at the time, or having something be really focused on just me. I never grew up going to shows where I went to see singer-songwriters or, you know, folk bands or country bands. It's just something I never really got into. And I did this tour, yeah, with Dal across Canada. It was a great tour, but it was also like the last time I ever did that. Like, I really disliked doing it, like standing up there and playing by myself. It's just really, it's not me. And we played at all these crazy venues. Like, we played 3 shows at Massey Hall in Toronto, which is like, there's all these Neil Young records recorded there, and it's this iconic venue. And just like, I think it was a real, like, you know, I think a lot of people would have looked at it as like, you know, a cornerstone of maybe their music career, but I definitely left those 3 shows feeling like, knowing that I'd never probably stand up on stage with an acoustic guitar and play again. Yeah. Grey Britain from Watford's notorious punks, Gallows. First time I heard about Gallows was in, you know, the music press in the UK, and people were talking about like the saviors of UK punk, the new Sex Pistols, the new Clash. And yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like, this is a record a lot of people heard the band on, but at the same time when they were recording it, they all fucking hated one another. And you can probably hear it in the songs. And I know I played with them a lot on this. We did Warp Tour together on this record. We did an Australian tour together on this record. And on all those records, I would talk to Frank, and he'd tell me about how he was quitting the band and how he, you know, he's just, his head wasn't in it anymore, you know, and like this wasn't his punk anymore. Like his punk was tattooing and painting or whatever. And you know, you got to be true to yourself, but in absolutely no way when I was having any of those conversations with him would I have thought that I would have been, you know, taking his place in the band. So life's full of surprises. This is the best representation of Black Lungs. When I said it was like a shitty punk band full of weirdos, and then we broke up because we couldn't keep it together. This is me finding a new bunch of weirdos and releasing. This is definitely my favorite record that I've ever done. This is the record I'm the most proud of. It's out on Deranged, which puts out Career Suicide and Fucked Up and The Regulations and pretty much all of my favorite bands. So to be able to put a record out with them is really, really cool. Yeah, this is what I always wanted Black Lungs to sound like, which is bratty, 77, fast punk stuff about Parkdale is like, the song Stay at Parkdale is about this horrible part of Toronto that we all lived in, everybody in the band at the time. And it's all about just talking about stupid stuff that happened there, you know, like getting yelled at by schizophrenics. And I remember I was like, it's the second day I was walking there, I remember I was, some really drunk woman at like 1 in the afternoon. Just I came into my house and she just started screaming at me, calling me a faggot. And I just like went, I was like, do I go back inside or do I? And she was like just screaming at me, going nuts. And you're like, nice jeans. And I was like on the phone, like I don't know. I was just like, what the hell's going on? So I just like went back into my house and just like went out my backyard. So I can't deal with this today. So luckily I don't live there anymore. Yeah, this record allowed us to play with a bunch of amazing bands. You know, have a chance to open with some really, really cool bands and play around Toronto. And we did a tour of the UK with Fucked Up when we put this out. And yeah, I think like probably some of my favorite touring and some of my favorite times in a band was, you know, around the time this came out. Right after this, I recorded a full length for Black Lungs called Pagan Holiday. I recorded 13 songs, and no one's ever heard it. It's done. It's, you know, waiting to be put out. But I was about to start touring it full time when I got asked to join Gallows, and I really don't want to just put a record out. I'm really proud of it, and I just don't want to put it out and not do anything with it. So until then, it will stay buried in the ground until it's time to unleash it on the earth. This is the last Alexisonfire record. The art is done by this dude Skinner, who does all this psychedelic stuff and stoner rock stuff. And I think it's like my favorite, you know, definitely my favorite artwork that I've ever had done for a record. At this time, the band was really kind of like up in the air. We had these songs done, but Dal had quit by this point, and I thought when he quit the band, I thought we were getting together to talk about this record and book the studio time. And what he did was quit, and I pretty much just like left the room immediately, like because I was just, I didn't know what to do. I was either going to start crying or I was going to like punch him in the face or something. And it was a really huge shock to all of us. And you know, we recorded this a few weeks later. I love the way it sounds. I love the songs, but I mean, it was definitely like a band that was, you know, fractured by that point, and like it was definitely a weird recording session followed by a bunch of weird touring. And you know, I mean, like he had to do what he had to do, and I don't fault the guy for doing what he wanted to do. You know, his heart just wasn't in it anymore, and you gotta be true to yourself and the music you want to do. So, you know, it's like everything's good with all of us. You know, we all grew up together. We all love one another. When you spend 10 years on the road with the same guys, you know what I mean? Like, I know them better than I know my family. So this is Wharf Rats, which is myself, the hip-hop artist POS, number 2 from Anti-Flag, and Chachi Darren from the AKAs. And you know, we'd all met on Warped Tour. We were all on Warped Tour, and I think just like-minded people, you know. And it's actually funny, the way I met POS was through Gallows. I was standing around with Lags, and he introduced me to POS. And Gallows had played with POS as this thrash band called Building Better Bombs. They're amazing. And he introduced me to him. I think we both thought we were just people at this party. When we met, we were just talking about punk records and skateboarding and stuff. And then the next day I saw POS playing. I was like, oh, this guy's on the tour. He's a musician. And then I was like, oh, good show. And then he was like, oh, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, my band's playing later. Come check it out. And then he's like, oh man, I had no idea you were Alexisonfire. He's like, I got that cover with the girl with her hands ripped off. I was like, yeah, it's one of the records. I don't know. Anyways, we found a day, I think it was in Atlanta. There's this mobile recording studio. Like one of the tour buses was turned into a studio. We went in that morning and wrote these 2 songs, like in an hour or something. And then we all had to keep leaving because we all had our sets. Like number 2 had to leave to go play the Anti-Flag set. Then, so he recorded his bass, and then I recorded guitar, and then I had to go leave, play the Alexis set, and then yeah, it's like vice versa all day. So, but then we got the whole thing done, mixed by the end of the day. And then yeah, No Sleep got in touch with us, said they wanted to put it out, and here it is. Hopefully we'll do a full length, but we're all busy dudes with like a bunch of, also all of us are all guys that are like very scatterbrained, I think, and so we've all got like 6 bands. So they're like realistically getting together to do a record, like who knows if we can make it happen at this point, but it would be great. This was like the easiest thing that I've ever done, it was just like an absolute riot to do. And then number 2 got his buddy from Pittsburgh to do the art. Looks like an old Crass record. Looks good to me. So this is the Death is Birth EP, like the aptly titled Death is Birth EP. I got a call from Steph really early in the morning. Like I think he didn't think of the time zone difference or whatever. It's like 6:30 in the morning. I didn't pick it up, and when I checked my messages at like 10 when I got out of bed, it was a message from Steph saying, hey man, what's going on? Don't really know what Alexis is doing. My brother quit the band yesterday. Do you want to be the singer at Gallows? And I like put the phone down and just kind of like rolled over and was like, just like almost like it didn't even happen. You know what I mean? It was just the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And then I listened to the message again and called him back. I was like, to be honest, Black Lungs aren't really doing much. We're not really touring. Alexis is pretty much done. Nobody knows, but it's done. And buy me a plane ticket and I'll be in England in a couple of days. And it was pretty much that simple. I got there, we wrote True Colors as soon as I got to the rehearsal space. They're like, oh, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I wrote some lyrics on the plane. And then we wrote that song. It's like 30 seconds long, so maybe it took us like a minute to write it or something like that. We recorded it a little bit later. They had this crazy plan for when I joined the band. I talked to them and they said like, okay, yeah, like you're the singer. We're going into the studio in like 3 weeks with Joby from the Bronx, and then we're doing a tour in like a month in the States. It's like 7 weeks long. And I was like, okay. And at that time, I was just like losing my mind with it. Like, I think it's the only way it really would have worked, because I think it forced us to get together and forced us to make it work in this really weird circumstance. But at the time, I was definitely like losing my mind, trying to like figure out how to do it, how to make it work with a band that lives halfway across the earth, and yeah, not playing the guitar for the first time, playing with these dudes who I know very well, but it's a totally different band, And I definitely look at this like a little bit like this, This is like how this started, and in a lot of ways I feel like this is how this has started. And this is definitely a better sounding demo than this, but yeah, I love them both for different reasons. Yeah, new aesthetic, new band, Gallows AD, year 1.